Wikipedia and Wikia, I'm just going to give you a brief overview. So Wikipedia, of course, everybody knows Wikipedia. 490 million people now use it every month. That number continues to go up. And then Wikia is my for-profit company, which you probably haven't heard of. Some of you may have heard of, but it's also doing very well. 65 million people use that every month, and it's ranked around number 35 on the internet. So these two projects, of course, have been, incredibly successful. And so one of the questions that, people have, of course, is what have I learned from this about innovation, disruptive technology, and so forth, and how do they have anything to do with London in particular? So how did I get here? This is a very important question. How did I get here? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. And I had, at the time, a brilliant business idea. I was working, doing things on the internet. I was a programmer. I am a programmer, a very bad programmer, but I can program. And so I noticed that people were using very inefficient ways to get food at work. They were faxing in orders. They would call. They would send somebody out to get food. And I thought, wow, I was using the internet every day. This is back quite a long time ago now. And I realized this business could move to the internet. I thought this should all move to the internet. People should be able to go online and order their lunch. So I started a website called Loop Lunch, and it was a failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. In 1996, when I was doing this, restaurant owners looked at me like I was from Mars. That was pretty much hopeless. So then I had another brilliant idea. This was a search engine. It was actually kind of I thought it was a brilliant brand. It was called 3apes.com, and it had the amazing slogan, which is hard to see here, type your search and the apes will find it. Now tell me how that didn't take off. It did have what I thought was a very clever idea, which was it would be an advertising-supported site, much like Google is today. But because I didn't have much traffic, I thought, well, there should be two ways to earn credit. So the brilliant business idea would be pay-per-click advertising. But you could pay for the advertising in two ways. You could either pay by actually paying, or you could pay by sending traffic and earning credit. So I thought I'd get lots of small websites to link to the site. They'll earn credits. They can use it to advertise on the site. It sounded like a great idea to me. And what was the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is really good at it. Chinese spammers took over the site within 3 months. So then I had another idea. This was called Newpedia. And the brilliant business idea here was a free encyclopedia for everyone. It would be written by experts. And I hired a PhD in philosophy to design it. And it was I thought a really good idea, an encyclopedia. And the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. I spent about $250,000 getting the first 12 articles published. I still keep these by my bed and read them every night. I will get my money's worth someday. This didn't work, and there were a lot of reasons why it didn't work. And one of the reasons is it was just really, really hard for people to participate. It was very intimidating, very academic. There was a 7-stage review process to get anything published, and it just didn't work. Didn't really know anything. So then, a bit exasperated with all of that, I had a really dumb idea. Again, a free encyclopedia for everybody. But I'll just open up a website, let anybody edit it, with no advertising, no sane business plan of any kind whatsoever. And what was the result? Success. Even Jimmy can do it sometimes. So Wikipedia, of course, you all know, has been a massive success. #5 website in the world. It's changing the face of knowledge forever, and it's a very inspirational project. People are very enthusiastic and excited about what this community has managed to accomplish. And so it's been a huge success. So building on that success, I had another brilliant idea, because I've never run out of brilliant, bad ideas. Wikia Search. So this was to be a search engine, modeled something like after a wiki, so you could edit the results and so forth. And when I announced it, it got huge amounts of press because of the success of Wikipedia. This was Fast Company magazine in the US. There's me on the cover, Google's worst nightmare. I don't know if that's true or not, but my mother bought 10 copies, so it's all right. So that was all very exciting, but it was also a failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. We had to close the project during the economic downturn. I was actually very encouraged by the early results. So we were building the software. Some people were starting to use it. but we could tell it was going to take another 2 or 3 years of development and a few million more dollars before it could really become a viable competitor. And when the economic downturn came, you know, we knew from our investors, we knew Silicon Valley was basically not investing in anything, the venture capitalists, and there was no way to raise more money to continue it. And so had to cancel the project. I still think it's a good idea. I still think somebody should do it. Next brilliant business idea was to build on the Wikipedia model, empower everyone to build the rest of the library, so every other kind of work than just an encyclopedia, focus on making it easy to use. Think about topics that would have good ad revenue and try to get those started. This was a for-profit concept. So this was success. This is Wikia. Even Jimmy can do it a second time. So Wikia is beyond Wikipedia. Oh, the font's a little messed up. Wikia now has over 65 million people using the website every month. So it's not as big as Wikipedia, but it's profitable. We've got about 140 employees around the world and doing very well, ranked number 36 in the US. So this worked. So I think there's a lot of lessons here for London and for all of us in thinking about innovation and creativity. And I'll just go through a few of these and then we can move on to the rest of the program. So number one is we must not fear failure. Hundreds or thousands of ideas have to be tried in order to achieve success. One of the things that really, really works about Silicon Valley is if you go and you're funded by an angel investor or by venture capitalists to do a startup and the startup doesn't work out, it doesn't mean your career is over. It doesn't mean that you hang your head in shame. It means you probably join forces with another startup, or you get a job at Google, or all kinds of good things can happen to you. Is not viewed as a horrible black market. In many cultures around the world, young entrepreneurs in particular are really vulnerable to the kind of pressure that they get from the broader culture, particularly their families. Like, what if you go and do this crazy thing and it doesn't work out? You'll be viewed as a failure. And you have to really change that mindset if you want to have an innovative entrepreneurial economy. Now, I put this as a lesson for London. It's actually a lesson for everywhere. I don't think London has this problem nearly as bad as many other places. Certainly, we have a lot of people coming here from continental Europe where the social pressures against entrepreneurship are much higher. Certainly, when we go to Japan, Korea, places like that, they really do struggle with this issue quite a bit. Young entrepreneurs there have a lot of pressure from their families that they should go and work at a big company or something like that instead. Second lesson, well, entrepreneurship is good, and this is really very much related to the previous one, but a slightly different view on that. There are good ways to make money and bad, and we have to learn to differentiate between the two in our culture. And here is an area where I think the UK does have a problem. Certainly, one of the main things, I can guarantee you, we could open up 5 of the UK papers today, and in 5 out of 5, you would find some story banging on about some rich person who did something and really going into a lot of detail and great sort of offense that someone is wealthy. And if it doesn't differentiate between different ways they may have made their money, I think that's a big mistake. We really want, are you a banker who got a fat bonus as you ran your company into the ground? And I think the public has a right to go, look at this rich jerk buying a yacht. Or are you somebody who actually built a real business and you did something, you invented something, or you don't have to invent something. You ran a chain of restaurants and you did it honorably and you did it well and you made a lot of money. I think if we have a culture that says, actually, that's great, that's exactly what we want people to aspire to, that's really, really important. And I do think that in the UK, that message sometimes gets lost, that there isn't necessarily an appreciation that some people who are rich did it in an honorable way, some people who are rich didn't get it in an honorable way, and if we just sort of tar all rich people in the same sort of anti-wealth mode, we're making a big mistake. Lesson 3, technological change of all kinds breeds new opportunities for upheavals. This thing of Wikipedia, it couldn't have existed without the internet, clearly. And it could have existed, though, several years prior. All of the technological pieces for Wikipedia existed from 1995. So web server, web browser, database, even the concept of a wiki, which means a website anyone can edit, that existed from 1995. And yet nobody put it all together to create a social innovation like Wikipedia until 6 years later when we did that. So right now we're in the midst of enormous amounts of technological upheaval and huge opportunities are being created. There are many, many things that you could do today that won't be done for several years because nobody will have gotten around to trying it, failing, trying it a different way, the way I did with Wikipedia. because of this, we should never think, oh, yeah, the internet, it's kind of been done now, and there's no new opportunities. There's huge new opportunities in technology and communications, and some of it does not require new technology or a new way of doing things in some kind of technological way. A lot of it is social innovation. So mobile, actually, so I want you to think about my phone for a second. This is one of the things I'm really excited about. I love to show people my phone. This is a phone that a friend of mine bought for me, an unlocked, it's an Android phone, so it has apps and everything. It's just like an iPhone. Screen's a little smaller than an iPhone. Screen's not quite as good, but it costs $85, and he bought it on the street in Kenya. And they have sold hundreds of thousands of these phones in Kenya now. That is an astonishing thing, and what is going on right now in Africa with the growth of bandwidth is something that is underneath most people's radar, but it is going to be absolutely enormous. If you think about that as a business opportunity or a cultural opportunity, I mean, a huge, the next billion people are about to come online, and they're not coming online from the places we know, they're coming online from places we don't know, and I think that's going to have an enormous impact on the world. So London is well positioned for this kind of transformative change, particularly when it's global. It's well positioned physically, so we're here. If you go 8 time zones in either direction, you've pretty much got most of the business centers and the technology centers in the world covered. We speak English. Well, you speak English, I speak American, but we can understand each other reasonably well. And that's really important for doing global business, global deals. It is the global language, and so you've got naturally built in an advantage that you speak the language from the beginning, so that's really fabulous. So now, lesson 4, I think this is the last one. There's an intimate connection between innovation, prosperity, and freedom, and I think this is really, really crucial. In order to have an innovative culture, you have to have a culture where people can do new things and make mistakes. You have to have a culture that supports people doing something different. The UK is generally free, so that is good news. But I think that there are troubling intrusions. So when I think about my world, the world of the internet, I can name a few specific ones, but in other fields there will be different ones depending on the field. This is the one that I know about. So. The 3 that I would mention would be super injunctions. In the era of Twitter, if you think about setting up something like Twitter, would you set it up in the UK? Well, you might come to the UK if you're already a big business like Twitter, but I think that there's a lot of caution that people need to have about what are users going to do, and is it going to be illegal? And this kind of attempt to limit the flow of information is hopeless in the modern world. Another one, coercion around filtering. I think my favorite one is the silly nonsense of the EU cookie directive. I don't know how many of you have noticed recently. You go around the internet, and everywhere you go, it says, hey, we're using cookies. Hey, we're using cookies. Well, I'm sure that seemed like a really clever idea whenever, like a decade ago, when somebody at the EU thought, oh, we should notify people. Now all websites use cookies. It's a really stupid thing to be doing. I mean, it's like, if you don't want to use cookies, turn them off in your browser, and guess what? Most of the internet won't work. So I just can't even, I'm mind-boggled by the fact that we've got this really silly regulation that isn't really helping anything. I mean, it's just like, what is this all about? But you think about, what does that mean for, what does that mean for Google or Yahoo or Facebook, or even for Wikipedia or any already giant web company? Very little, just get a programmer to add a little notice and so on. What does it do to a one-person startup, somebody who's creating a website, a whole new innovative kind of website? It's just yet a whole nother, you should go read some of the how to comply with the EU cookie directive. And it's like, okay, well, there's 2 days of work to make sure that I've read and understood this so that I'm not breaking the law. Those kinds of costs hit big websites in a very small way. They hit startup projects in a very big way. And that's just one example. So those are the kinds of things that when we think about policy, we think about what can the government do to help these tiny little startups, some of it is thinking about, well, what is it that they're having to do that's kind of stupid, and can we protect them from having to do that? Stay out of our way so we can build the future is basically what I would have to say there.